This is the greatest day ever. We need to celebrate your birthday, babies, 'cause you were just born today. Once, after Hatches got killed, I'd asked Hymnal about what happened when we died. The question seemed somewhat pertinent at the time. The answer she gave was simple. We went into the recycler, and some pony took our place. Finding an answer somewhat less than fulfilling, I pressed on. She attempted some muttered comment about how, when you died, you went to the afterlife to be reunited with the princesses and your loved ones. When she reported me to Mom, and one sore but later, I learned not to harass our stable's duty-appointed spiritual leader. Personally, I was finding being dead not that much different than being alive in the ocean. It was black and quiet, and I couldn't feel anything. I was just nowhere. I had a vague sense of motion, but I couldn't tell or begin to tell you how I was moving or where I was going. I had no limbs to move, no heartbeat, no mouth to speak or breathe through. It was at this moment that I had my epiphany. Death is really boring. Mom had taught me about how the living dealt with death, but she'd been somewhat lax on what the dead were supposed to do. About a tiny pinprick of lavender light, far off in the distance, came to life, and with it I heard a single soft note, and felt a gentle pull towards it. Now, I know that most ponies say not to head towards the light. Those ponies failed to mention that there weren't actually a lot of other options. Considering how many bad choices I've made in life, what was one more? Though, considering how many bad choices I've made, I looked forward to Celestia punting my sorry ass straight to hell. I guess I could have fought against the pull, but I was tired of the darkness. As I moved, I could hear the tone more clearly. It wasn't one constant drone, but a single musical note that pulsed with a throb of the light, and another pulse accompanied the first one. I moved closer still and saw a second light, a soft orange point that sang with the other, and then a third was born, a cheery pink, then another majestic purple, teal, a pear, green, and gold. A pair of pink motes pranced and tumbled around each other with a tinkling like laughter, while a purple and lavender pair hovered attentively nearby, each with its own note, its own music. There were hundreds, thousands, millions. Wow. Stars. They weren't just lights in the sky. Well, they were, but they were other things as well. Like how, when you took a hoof and held it in front of one open eye, you could see both your hoof and whatever the other eye saw. But I didn't know what I was looking at. They were luminous things, strange and unusual and powerful. Some kind, most politely indifferent. Some were in the shapes of wheels and eyes and Brahmin. Others were strange patterns that twisted and seemed to sing notes of music my mind couldn't understand. And some were ponies, glowing outlines that frolicked as they sang their music together, their individual notes rising and falling and growing and blending with the notes of the others that shared their great expanse. They filled the void with song and light and their own strange beauty, their harmony. Other beings flirted around with them and spread chaos and discord to stir up new melodies and music they could not create themselves. And I knew that I was home. I could stay here if I wanted. There was always room for one more, for countless more, and I'd be happy here. I was sure of it. A part of me belonged here. Except I looked back behind me at a round ball orbited by two lights, one pale and beautiful, the other bright and radiant. But the world they revolved around was dark and ominous. What of my friends? The song turned mournful. There was nothing I could do now. I should stay. There wasn't any place left for me there. Nothing that could hold me. But I kept looking down at the distant world. I felt one of those luminous shapes move behind me and gently hold me in her hooves. Stay, please, she seemed to beg. I saw the other worlds with the lights. Some orbited distant radiant orbs. Others had dozens of expectant motes above them as they sang down their own melodies. But all these worlds were bright, with countless twinkling specks, like a glitter or dew. And I watched as one of these luminary beings grew bright, and then in a burst of light the song disappeared. The glowing cloud left behind spread, and new lights began to settle on the other worlds, or birth new luminary beings. Even these things were not eternal. But in that darkness, beyond their light, I felt certain that there were things that were. I looked back at my world. There were so few glimmering lights, and there seemed to be almost a spider's webs of shadows draped over the entire world. Some light escaped, but most seemed caught in that dark web covering everything. The light of those orbiting spheres couldn't reach most of the world, as they tried, as they might, to find a gap in the darkness and shadows. What the hell had happened? The hooves holding me tightened, and off to the side I heard another note rise, accompanying a star glowing with a fierce blue-white cornea. A pony? No. Nolicorn, proud and regal and glorious. He spread his wings wide and sang his note loud and glorious across the heavens. He drove back those shadows beyond and all things that dwelled within. Such was he that his song drowned out all others as he swelled with pride. I expected the star to eventually stop and take a break, but he didn't. Instead, he grew along with his volume. It grew to the point where the melody of these illuminary bodies was drowned out, grew to where it almost became painful. I kept waiting for him to burst as the others had, and let something new take his place. The mischievous ones floated around him, trying to trick him and break his wondrous note. Then he burned them with his scorn. Louder, louder. It was as if he were trying to fill all the universe with a single overwhelming note. He struggled with the strain, the note transforming into a scream. Then he exploded. It was not a gentle burst of life-giving light. No, this explosion was raw and violent, as his scream echoed to the furthest corners of the universe. Then his cloud fell inward. He would not die as the other luminous ones had. He would not share his life. His blue glow contracted and darkened. Something that was a star hardened and transformed from light to something dark and base. And still it screamed, tearing at the melody around it. No trick by the sprites could stop it. No songs from the others could reach it. And the song died. The darkness encroached. Finally, a blue radiance altered its place in the heavens and plunged straight at the screaming mass. It sang its own ominous melody as it plunged in faster and faster towards the sullen ember, one song combating the other as they closed together. The impact and the blast of light filled the skies as the blue luminescence died and the screaming embers shattered. Only a dark and twisted core remained, tumbling through the heavens like a heart of black iron. Its scream rendered painful and thin. It flew towards the darkness, untouched by the stars. By chance, a world, green and rife, with tiny specks of ghost light, drifted too near. The twisted remains curved towards it, speeding as they plunged towards the highest snow-capped mountain. A blast shattered the great peak, blasting it apart into flying stone. An immense pillar of cinder and flame shot up, raining down in an ever-widening circle of destruction. More mountains split and shattered, vomiting great torrents of fire and surging floods of magma. The forests transformed into sheets of flame. The seas were poisoned by ash and pieces of the star. The sky was rendered black with clouds. Those fragile motes and their infant songs were snuffed out in an instant. From the great impact, a ring of stone formed, the pieces drawing together to collect the tiny specks of life. Sun and moon orbited the blackened rock. Eons passed, and I watched as the clouds thinned, and the first rays of sunlight and moonlight played on the blackened ground. The dead seas lay calm and still, the broken mountains finally silent. Where the dread heart had fallen was a vast bowl filled with black rock. The heart, its spiteful malice sated, slumbered. Its hateful mote dropped to a whisper. Rain fell, washing out the dust and smoke, and filling the bowl with a deep lake of dark water. Tiny patches of life began to grow beneath the passing sun and moon. The patches became bush and forest. Insects and fish began to populate the world once more. Then larger, more complex animals. Mountains rose and fell, and the world shifted and changed as life once more flourished. And then those motes of life began to sing their own simple melodies. Their songs became more complex, rising and falling and evolving. Trickster spirits came to mold and meddle and inspire. The songs spread to every corner of the world, save one. In the dark lake, the buried heart stirred. It shrugged, and the mountains broke, and the waters drained into the sea. The heart could do nothing but hum its one hateful tone and wait. Life crept innocently into the crater, and soon there was no warning to the rest of the world save for a knot of granite rising like a tombstone in the center. Deep within the earth, the vicious star waited. It could do nothing, its dread power spent. But then zebras came to it, with their songs and their dances. They built their homes and temples, and finally a city. Most had no idea what was beneath them, but for some, sleep was troubled with the star droning its hateful tune. And from the pain it caused came inspiration for magic dark and foul. The songs were silenced, the dances stilled. Dark robes were donned, and the temples soon rang with the resonant drone. The ground was torn away. The fragments were forged into terrible weapons. The zebras went out to silence all other songs and to turn all voices to the star's dread tone. It grew strong as others sang its song on its behalf, that hateful noise, so like a scream. And the stars perceived.